Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello, everyone. Tracy here. Welcome back to another episode. I am so thankful to have you joining me for another fantastic conversation. But before we dive right in, a quick word from this week's sponsor. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, I am so excited. I have two amazing ladies with me, Lauren Van Ewyk and Bridgette Readel. How are you?
Hey, it is so good to be back with you, Tracy. And the best part is Bridgette is joining us. I'm so excited. But I'm good. Very good.
Good. Bridgette, how are you?
It is fabulous to see everyone. And when you have, as we were talking earlier, those connections of seeing people online, but then finally getting to actually visit with them, it just elevates your day.
Yeah, I agree. We were saying that before we jumped on here. And there's so many amazing people in agriculture doing great things. And today, these two ladies on their own do amazing things. And they came together to create the Rural Well podcast, which is amazing. So before we dive into the theme of our show, we're going to talk about the podcast. I want to hear all about it, what you've learned, how you serve agriculture, and then we're going to talk about mental health because I think I always say it with every guest where we talk about mental health. It's like now more than ever, and it almost seems like the universe continues to go like, hold my beer every time I say it. We've never needed mental health more. So, and I know you ladies feel the same. So before we dive in, Lauren, Bridgette, whoever wants to go first, can you share about your many roles and the work you do in agriculture?
Absolutely. Well, one of my, I guess, greatest privileges when it comes to my work in agriculture is number one, I am a farmer. And I've been away for the weekend. Our foster daughter is in hospital as well. And so to come home last night and be with my husband in the barn was really actually really precious. And that leads us to all of the other pieces of our story, both Bridgette and I in working with the Rural Well. But the other piece is I'm the CEO of the National Farmers Mental Health Alliance. And that's a group of therapists that formed to say, our farmers need more and they need something really specific. Research shows us that when farmers access wellness, whatever that looks like, whether they're going to their family doctor, they're going to see a physiotherapist, they're going to see a clinician, a therapist, the services they receive must be informed from a cultural perspective of agriculture. And unfortunately, that piece, I think it's pretty safe to say, has been largely missed. There is no education system that we know of in Canada when you go through to be a social worker or a medical doctor or any other allied health professional where there is a specific training for those who live in rural populations. And 30% of Canadians live in rural and remote areas of Canada. So it's we're actually a larger group than I think we realize. In Canada and agriculture, 1 in 9 jobs is affiliated with agriculture, the agri-food industry. So we actually are a powerhouse of both economic stimulation in Canada and the US as well. And yet we're also a population that tends to, I call them ruggers, and Bridgette will probably laugh at that because she has always loved the term. As farmers, we're ruggers. We like to lift the rug, sweep all the crud underneath, and then drop the rug, hoping that it will somehow magically disappear, but it doesn't. So it's been a privilege. That is definitely one of, and with that comes an opportunity to speak nationally and internationally. We have over 100 therapists trained in agriculture-informed therapy training, which is a program that we developed to train therapists in their work with farmers. And one of the other privileges that we get to do, I'm a PhD student at the University of Guelph, and I sit under the leadership of Dr. Leith Deacon, who is phenomenal. Leith is actually our director of research at the NFMHA, and so we have a couple of programs that are currently underway. And we're super excited to see those come to fruition.
Excellent. Bridgette, tell me more.
I've been furiously taking notes on the things that Loren was saying so I don't double up. But to be perfectly honest, I'm the worst retired person you've ever met. I was spent a 25-year career in corporate America as a regional agronomist. I covered 4 states here in the U.S. and I had a sales territory at one point in time. And after 25 years, it was time to do something different. And believe it or not, I had a Twitter follower reach out to a radio station group locally and suggest me as someone who could talk about ag on a semi-regular basis, which within 3 weeks turned into, could you work for us? So now I'm the ag director for Flag Family Media and WDAY Radio out of Fargo. And on my free time, I get to spend it with wonderful people like Loren. I own Lilac Lane Media. We do podcasts such as The Real Well. I have a live chat every Friday on Twitter that I do that then also goes out as a podcast. It's called the Nooner Chat because we do it at 11:30 on Fridays. But then also I get to go out and speak, whether it's on topics within agriculture, technically speaking about weed control, retail business, and then also about farmer mental health. And then lastly, I am a business partner in the Ag Mafia. Myself and my 2 partners host Agronomy on Ice, which is literally a farm show on a frozen lake in February, where your booth is an ice house. And we spend the day talking about farming, fishing, and food. And after that, Ag Mafia also goes out as speakers for a variety of agricultural topics as well. So I talk a lot. That's the summary statement here, Tracy.
Nice.
I talk a lot.
Nice. I love chatting. As you can tell, I think anybody that has a podcast, you probably like chatting, right? So, what I am just so excited to learn, how did you guys meet and how did this podcast come around? Like, there's so many connections in agriculture. I'm like, what's that moment where this, okay, actually, that's probably 2 questions. When did you meet? And then, how did the idea of the podcast come about?
Oh goodness. Bridgette, you're probably better. You're so good at dates. I'm thinking we met 2.5 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
I could be, yeah, okay.
Roughly. I would say it's probably been a couple years. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah.
and mostly by accident.
Okay.
Yeah, like I think we both had connected with Elaine Freeze,
Mhm.
Oh,
and she's known as the Farm Whisperer. She works a lot in succession planning in agriculture. And she was just like, there was a couple of us. Also, Callie Thorne was the other person
Mhm.
that she had kind of introduced us with. And originally, Callie was gang ho to join the. It was going to be the 3 of us on the podcast. Callie, she and her husband undertook a huge project, which was to. I think they have an abattoir now,
Yes.
if I remember
Yes.
correctly.
As well as raising 3 kids and a whole lot of head of cattle. And so their lives got very busy. And there had been this underlying sense of we kept seeing each other in
Mhm.
social media and thought there has to be a way for us to work together. And Loren stepped up right away and said, we need a podcast. We need to be able to reach people on both sides of the border. We need to get them focusing more on not just their mental health, but their overall health. And we don't just want to focus on the farmer. We need to think about the farm family, the rural community. And because I don't say no, I said absolutely. And I think that's a fantastic idea. And so the Rural Well was literally born of those thoughts of we should do something and we should do it together. And Loren said, when you think about wellness and you think about that well on your farm that provides flowing water and health and the good things that it does for you, that was where the idea came from to be the Rural Well. We want to flow with ideas and resources to those who need them.
And it goes deep, right? Like a well is not a shallow
ooh,
basin. It
ooh,
Mhm.
goes deep. And wellness is it's a deep concept. And it infiltrates all areas of our life, like a well that produces good water from a deep source. So that's where we got the name from.
oh, I love all of that, but you just caught me on the word deep. And that's what I like about podcasting because it goes deep, right? Like social media is great. You can connect, podcast, video, episodes go deep and really quick. on that, I was just at a conference last week and I sat down beside somebody I knew and I said, so and so, how's it going? And then we're talking, and then out of the blue, he's like, Tracy, I have a hard time making small talk these days. I said, Terry, I don't like small talk. I said, I like to go deep. It's like, and then I turned to him, I'm like, what's the meaning of life? And then and then it was funny. And if I accidentally say his name, I'm sure he won't mind. But then he says back to me, he's like, I am so honed in on helping farmers in this area. So I love the deep because I think that's where we open those can of worms and then open those meaningful conversations. And one more really quick. When I heard you guys launch the podcast, I was so happy because multiple people need to tackle that subject of mental health. I was trying to do some episodes, but I really kind of stay in the lane of farm business and mental health as needed. So when you guys launched that, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So I was excited for you in the background.
Really quickly, when you talk about
Yeah.
going deep, I can't help but jump back there. I was just pondering and thinking about community. So in
Sure.
agriculture, we have a high what's called social capital, which means we care for one another, we invest in one another, but we actually live in an age of loneliness in North America.
Oh,
We're among the loneliest people in the world.
yeah.
And part of the reason for there's many, many reasons for that, but part of it is the lack of kind of going deep, the lack of being transparent and authentic. And I think that that's really the part of the goal of the podcast is to start those conversations so people have an avenue where it's acceptable now to talk about the wonderful things in ag and the hard things in ag. When we look to the future, there's potentially some hard things around the corner.
Yeah.
And some of us have been going through some hard things. I don't want to
Right.
whitewash it to say it's Skittles and sunshine right now.
Yeah. Bridget, did
And
you
I,
have anything to add? I seen
I,
you. I seen you. Yeah.
I think this winter is going to be particularly tough, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit more as our time goes on today. But I have some great concerns about what the winter of 2025, 2026 looks like for the mental health of many of our folks in rural communities.
Mhm.
Me too. We're going to go there. And then I have a few areas we're going to ebb and flow, but really quick. And I'm sure you ladies are the same if you started a podcast about mental health, but sometimes even in the farm business management and the succession planning, I'm not a fixer or saver, so to speak, by nature. But I find with the podcast, I'm like, oh, we need to save farm families and we need to save farmers. Like you look at let's use X as an example. You open up X and then
Mm-hmm.
you just see and you see and you're like, oh my gosh, how can we help farmers? So I'm going to say it again. I'm so happy that you two ladies have created a platform to talk 100% about that. So you touched on it a little bit. I'm going to ask one deeper. Lauren, you said community. What has been the feedback from the community about the podcast? And then a follow up, if you guys want to flow with this, what episodes, topics, niche topics have landed most powerfully with listeners? You have any thoughts on that?
Great question. I think the feedback from the podcast has been extraordinary. And it's not often captured actually online. It's captured rather more personally. We see people who reach out and Bridget has quite a public following. And so she will often send me a little note to say, hey, look at the note I got. Sometimes it's people who are like, oh man, I needed to hear this right now. But so I think that piece actually humbles, like it's very humbling for Bridget and I because it's not like any of us set out, like neither of us set out to be podcast, in fact, I actually have an interesting story. When I was young, we went to one of those job fairs. So I was probably in grade, 6, 7, somewhere in there. And we went to a town nearby, and there was about maybe 15 different stations. And one of the stations was a radio station. And so, what they had, this is in the day of cassette tapes. So for those who are generations below me, there was these cassette tape thingies where they would record our voices. And so we were given a sheet of paper to read, and record it. And so I did so. And the gentleman, I'm sure he was trying to be very nice, but he was like, "Yeah, never. Like you're not a public speaker. You're not. Radio is not for you." Um, and I was like, "Well, that's okay. I'm going to be a nurse." And he was like, "Good on you. Like, keep on the good work. Go be a nurse because this is not for you." And I look back and I laugh at that because I think so often there's these people who can really speak into our lives at a young age and they don't even realize the power of their spoken word. But that aside, it's humbling in that there are people out there who feel connected to us, um, and it's just a really special opportunity. I'm very thankful for people that they trust us. Um, and the reality is Bridget and I don't have it all together. Like I'm not the perfect mom. I'm not the perfect wife. I'm definitely not the perfect farmer or therapist. But in building this sense of community, we learn from one another, and so for that, I'm really thankful. I think that as far as the episode one, I don't know, Bridget will have probably a little bit better insight. One that I think about often is the one with Dr. Ryan Burkhart. That was really impactful. And another one was the one with was with Diane Bergsma, and she talked about the grief journey of losing their son Dallas to suicide and the birth of Three Oaks Cabin. So those are two that really pop into my mind. But I don't know. There's some gems.
So I am the diligently typing and looking in the background person over here. And so there's a couple of things. When we have episodes that stand out, um, there is a distinct line based on the topic that Loren and I take on, where we have women who respond and say, "I'm so glad I heard this right now, and it really affected me." And I think part of that is because when it's just Loren and I, two ladies chatting, and another woman is listening, women are the caregivers for everybody else. They rarely take care of themselves. And so they hear something strike them that they realize this matters to me right now. And I hear these two ladies saying it. When it comes to folks telling their family stories, I think Brian Reisinger from Wisconsin stands out
Oh
because he shares how he wrote a book. And really, the basis of his book is your farm can transition and it can be different than you thought. And that doesn't mean you're going to lose the farm. You don't lose the legacy. You don't lose your identity. But it's okay that things change. And I felt like that one really resonated with a lot of people as well.
yeah. Actually, as you mentioned that, I think about all the when we did the one on boundaries, there
Yeah.
was a number of people that reached out, another number of women who were like, okay, like this gave me some meat that I can really do something with.
Hmm.
Because that's, pretty consistently in particularly in generational agriculture where we see difficulty in communication and difficulty in setting boundaries and implementing them.
Nice. I
The
hear a
boundaries,
thought.
the boundaries is an area where people struggle
Mm,
so much. Because you've married into operations and you don't want to step on toes. And this can be coming from a male or a female perspective. I don't
Mhm.
want to step on anybody's toes. Transition planning, because you can only ask so much of the outgoing generation before that reaction becomes angry or dissatisfied. And so I think that's probably one of the hardest things to overcome on that farm and that operation is what are those boundaries and how do we set them so everybody feels like it's somewhat fair, but also safe?
Mhm. Mhm.
oh my. I already in our conversation, and we haven't been going, I'm like, there's three rabbit trails I want to go down here. And I'm like, focus, Tracy, because we could do an episode on each one of those, and that's amazing. Lauren, actually, you sparked an idea and a thought that I had after we recorded. Just so you know, in the audience, there's an episode coming out with Lauren about the National Farmer Health Mental Health Alliance. We did it just the two of us. And it's from what Bridget said as well. about the women chatting. And when we were chatting, Loren, I said, well, women, I made this comment. And then after we got off, I'm like, that's not even right. And I didn't say it to be misleading, but I said the verbal thing that I normally say because I feel I'm different as a lady and don't talk about stuff. So then I said the public version of that to you. And I said, well, us women, we're good at chatting about our problems in a group. That doesn't reflect how I feel because I'm not that way. And then you said, well, actually, typically farm women don't. And then we're the dumping ground, the safe place for our husbands and their concerns. And then we moved on. And then after, I'm like, that was not right, Tracy. So I'm so glad you brought that up because that is huge, right? And of course, that's the beauty of marriage and partnership. We get to share the burdens because we're partners, but women don't necessarily chat and community, maybe like we used to, maybe personality. Anyways, I wanted to go there because you brought it up again, and I think that's important, right?
Yeah, I think I don't want to jump in there if Bridget, you had something to add. But post-COVID, women have their personal wellness has actually declined. Rural women's personal wellness has declined more than the rest of the population, basically. And there's many reasons for that, but one of the primary ones is they're their spouse's sole support. So, and I know I'm talking about from more of a traditional lens, but you can take this lens and apply it to your own life for fairness there. But basically, what we see is husbands or men are experiencing a great deal of stress, far more than what we saw our parents and grandparents experience. Now, they did experience generational trauma, those who immigrated, there's a number of pieces there, but the everyday kind of chronic stress that current farmers are experiencing, in addition to some of those generational pieces, is really significant. And they depend on their wives to kind of be their sole support. And so when things feel overwhelming, when things feel scary, they feel safe enough to share with their spouse, rightfully so in one aspect. But unfortunately, we stay there instead of saying, you know what, you need to get some more professional help, or you need to build a community of people around you where we're willing to be really transparent with one another. And I think that sense of community, if we can grow that in agriculture again, it's harder to do. We have fewer people around us. Um, and we have, there's a little bit more competition now. We live in a more individualistic society, unfortunately. And so, because of that, we are less likely to be transparent. We also see an increase in narcissism that happens on the farm. I don't want to be careful with that word. I'm not necessarily meaning diagnosable narcissism, but
Okay.
more of that kind of self-preservation and that self reflection, not reflection, but self-focused piece. And so, because of it, that actually acts as a barrier between authentic relationship. Um, so those are all pieces, but they directly impact the wellness of women. And as women, we're afraid to do anything about it, right? As women, we're afraid to, set those boundaries as well. Understandably so. We can do
And
it when we experience community.
I think women, we're such caretakers,
Yeah.
and we're so excited that when our husbands are seeing that stress and anxiety, that they're finally telling us what's hurting them, and we're like, okay, oh, let me take this. I'm the caregiver. You can share all this with me. I am so happy. But then we have a hard time turning around and doing the same. I think many of us even find that no matter how close relationships are with other women in our lives, well, I don't want to dump on them. They've already got a full plate. I don't want to make my family reflected in a bad light. Where's the
Mm.
honesty that our grandmas have in those pictures from Christmas and Thanksgiving 50 years ago? There was a Marlboro, a gin and tonic, and they tell you whatever you wanted to hear.
Yeah.
We've lost that. We want to make sure that we have this image that everything's going fine and we're taking care of it, when in reality, we're probably the ones who are most at risk. Women's heart disease is on the rise. We see, uh, I don't want to call it closet drinking. I don't know what the right word for it is, but
Shed
self-medicating.
drinking.
Yeah,
Shed drinking. Yeah,
yeah. I see a lot more in women than we did 10 years ago.
absolutely.
they're absorbing the stress.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting. I was just working on, we're currently, the National Farmers Mental Health Alliance currently has a program for grief after suicide. As most of our listeners would know, that suicide is a very real threat um, to our agriculture community. And as I was reading it, we were just the research regarding the correlation between substance use and abuse, or and thoughts of suicide was just so strong in the agriculture community. And what we see, I mean, post-COVID, the general population, we saw an increase in use. But for those in the agriculture industry, it has been a real uphill climb, and has sustained that. There wasn't the we go back as much as there was in the kind of urban population.
Interesting. I want to jump in really quick and get extra real and vulnerable, which I do and I don't, and I'm okay with it. But touching on, Bridgette, you really sparked me when you said that ladies, men, both listen, but ladies, when they listen to ladies, to me, I always picture the two things I want to say really quick. When I was building this media company 17 years ago, this was new. It was before social media. Like, I was doing my journey as entrepreneurs, as farmers. I think it's okay that we now say we feel fear, doubt, insecurity, anxiety, not the mental health version, but we feel those things. And as a young entrepreneur 17 years ago, I'm like, am I broken? Like, why do I feel fear? So my first point was I listened to podcasts. I devoured them because other people said, I felt fear and did it anyway. So I'm like, oh, I'm normal feeling this. So point number one, going back to deep, like podcasts, even if you're not talking to the podcaster, it's a deep conversation that you're listening to that just moves you. Really quick, that I want to add with the women, and what I wish I would have said to you, Lauren, in our conversation is, by nature, I'm not a talker about my feelings. The mental health people will not be happy with this conversation because sometimes I find we can have a mental health conversation here. Sometimes, and maybe this resonates, I'm going to say it. Sometimes I find when I used to open up to people, it was in a space and a place and time when I needed to talk. And we all know that stuff ebbs and flows. Good natured, they'd come back when I was not in a space where I was at that anymore. And it was like a bucket of cold water. I'm not typically like a very vulnerable person. So number one, I kind of stopped talking for that reason and I process my stuff. But number two, with the farming end, and what I love about your work, Lauren, is ag informed. My family all have roots to agriculture. But so far, I don't think anybody listens anymore. They did when it was new and fresh, this show. So I'll say it here. Their roots are so far gone from agriculture, it's literally non-existent. So if it's so disconnected, and yeah, the advocating all that. But here's what I find. One level deeper to, I don't want to have to share and then manage their emotions about what we're going through later. But the second part about that is they would say things so disconnected to agriculture, I would feel antagonized, where it'd be like, oh, it's so busy. Anthony can't get away. They're holiday people. Right? It's like 9 to 5. So I'd share my feelings, thoughts, concerns, and then they would dump back on me how we're doing it wrong, how we need to this. And financially, it didn't make sense. From staffing, it didn't make sense. From agriculture, it didn't make sense. So I'm like, wall. And then that was the end of Tracy for various reasons talking. So Lauren, I'm glad I'm able to share my true feelings about deeper.
I love that.
Because I think women, maybe that's what you were saying. We just, let's not talk about it.
Yeah, we do. And I see Bridget's nodding her head as well, because I often liken back to Brené Brown, and I know everybody knows the name Brené Brown, but she tells the story of what does vulnerability look like. And she was talking with a sign language interpreter, and the sign language interpreter held out their left hand flat, and with the right hand put two fingers down, your index finger and your middle finger, and then crooked crook them down, look like the person was falling. In other words, weaken the knees.
Oh,
That was the sign for vulnerability. And Brené Brown was like, whoa, no,
oh.
that is not what we're trying to say. So then the sign language interpreter said, well, there's this other thing. It's where you kind of take your arms and you basically open up yourself.
Mm.
And and Brené Brown says that's what we're looking for because it takes courage to be vulnerable, right? Like and what you talked about there is you got the courage and you were vulnerable, and then somebody didn't validate, didn't respond the way you needed. Understandable, right? Because we are humans
Yep.
and we often know our own story best, and so we impose our story on other people. And so what you did is you then closed up those doors again, rightfully so. The problem happens when we don't choose to trust and open that door, Ken. Right?
Mm.
Like it's okay you open it up, it's okay you shut it, but don't stay shut.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes in agriculture, particularly because in within agriculture, there's an unwillingness to recognize like, yeah, this is really hard. There's an unwillingness to validate because if we validate somebody else's story, it means we have to look at our own story. And we've kept that locked away for a long time.
Ooh.
And so part of our reason for not, really listening and validating is because we have our own story, our own pain that we haven't addressed. And so that's probably what you actually experienced.
Isn't it funny, actually, what you just said about the sign language? Did you notice when I was talking about that, I did this?
Yes.
Even before you said it, I did this. Like I
Yep.
closed up when I was
Close it
telling
up.
you guys. I just naturally, funny, eh?
Yeah. Well,
Funny,
no, but
eh? Canadian.
reality.
That slipped out.
Reality, though, that is reality.
Yeah.
In agriculture, that vulnerability has been seen as weak in the knees. And if we're weak in the knees, it means we won't be able to maintain the contracts that we need to for next year. If we're weak in the knees, we won't be able to financially endure the hardships that come, right? Like I have not yet seen a farm that grows continually at the same rate of growth consecutively over a 10-year period. That doesn't happen in agriculture.
Mm-mm.
And so it's really scary to see vulnerability as somebody who's weak.
Yeah.
And that's not what it is. To be
No,
vulnerable is to be courageous.
I agree.
Well,
Great.
and as women, we were told not to be weak.
That's right.
But we realize that also as farm kids, you're told that you're tougher than that. Pull yourself up out of that mud and manure, you'll be fine. Is our
Don't cry.
bone sticking out? Don't cry. You're good. And so we've always been told not to be weak. And Loren and I have shared this example often, and I have a group of ladies who are just peers to me that we have to tell each other from time to time. We grew up with the adage that you're women, you can do everything. You can do anything. The problem was we don't have to do it all. Somebody could have mentioned that we can say no from time to time and we don't have to have these lives full of adrenaline and chaos and stress because we continue to absorb it and it reflects back on our families. And right now, there is a lot of high stress and anxiety in farming, and it's not good for everyone.
Yeah.
I see that all the time. What we're seeing is more and more farmers are actually pulling away from the farming community. They're continuing to farm.
Mm-hmm.
They're continuing to kind of
Mm-hmm.
head down, nose to the grindstone. We're continuing to do what we do, but we're pulling away from the ag community.
Hmm.
That's alarming.
Interesting. I wonder why. Do you have any reasons, thoughts?
Yeah, if I so there's different categories of burnout, and the more burned out we get, the more likely we are to pull away from our support systems. We're more likely to
True.
develop what we call, sorry to give you a technical term, Gaber Mate calls it super autonomous self-sufficiency, where we're more and more likely to just do our own thing. Nobody else can do it, and we start to feel really numb. And that's the category that I see farmers in all the time. There's 4 different categories: zealot, irritable, withdrawal, and the last one we call is zombie. And more farmers are entering into that zombie phase. We see an increase in intimate partner violence in that phase.
Mm.
But the telltale sign is I feel hopeless, I feel helpless, and I just have to get it done. And I just make myself do it. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel anything anymore.
And I think a big premise for Loren and I is not just being able to talk about these things, but then additionally being able to tell folks, where do I go to find help? What's my starting point? Do I start by just talking to my general practitioner? I don't want to park my pickup outside the local therapist's office because somebody's going to see it and know I'm there. And our jobs in this podcast and in the work that we do, whether it's online or in person, is to help people take that little step of how can I help myself or how can I help the next person? Because we need actionable items, not just chat. We need actionable items. Who are the places that and the resources where I can go for help?
I like it. I did an episode, and it was mainly spurred on by what's going on in the States. I mean, trade is affecting us too. And to be honest, I can't even remember the whole, just chatting about it, because
Mm-hmm.
to me, life-changing stuff has been when people have opened that space on the air, on a podcast, and said, it's okay if you feel this way. So
Yes.
I opened the conversation. It was called Farmers Let's Talk, and it was a little intense because I'm an intense person. And I talked about what was going on. And I said, with everything going on, mental health, you think? When we look at the debt levels that we farm with now, and I was having a conversation with my husband, I'm like, how does this make sense? Like, and we've bought everything we farm and we've grown aggressively, and that's a choice, but you almost need to be able to sustain the, not almost need to, you need to be a certain level of a farm to be full
Mm-hmm.
time, or else you're going to town to have a job. So we've grown aggressively. Choice needed. And then I looked at it, I said, okay, previous generations have farmed the same amount of land for a
Mm-hmm.
fraction of the debt. Of course, land goes up with the same commodity prices fluctuating, but I'm like, how does this make sense? Mental health, you think? But anyways, I just added that in there with no real call to action. But again, in this conversation, you hear it. I'm not sure the episodes and the through line, but now more than ever, Bridgette, I know this, and Lauren, I know it's hot on your hearts and minds, is we're concerned about farmers right now.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the debt level. And I'll let you guys go, but I just want to say my piece, not let you go. We're not done. Let you chat after I get it out. How are we not going to have mental health concerns when everything is so costly? Income's down. Well, I was gonna say beef's enjoying our run, but that's coming on the downslide right away. We sold
Yeah.
calves the other day. Ouch. Um, but yeah, farmer health, you think. There, I'll leave it at that. What you guys, what are you hearing? What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
Well, okay. So, Bridgette, you want to go first on this one?
I can.
This big
Um,
can of worms.
it's it's going to be a rough winter, and we've already seen it. There was a span of about 5 weeks there in late summer, early fall, where we saw roughly 8 farmer suicides, and they were primarily here in the states, in the northern tier states. Um, I think there were probably more, but just like we saw in the 80s, was it a farm accident
Oh,
or was it not? And
oh,
that question is asked more and more often because financial situations are so precarious at this point. And it's not just our farmer, it can be our farmer, the family. We're seeing kids having talks in school now about stress mitigation and their mental health because they come from a farm family. And what does that look like? And that we also have to think about our extended family within our communities. Whether you're a seed salesman, an equipment mechanic, a grain merchandiser, this affects you too. My husband ran an agronomy center for 25 years, and he will tell you that I didn't farm a field, I farmed everybody's fields.
oh.
And that stress weighs on all of those suppliers and vendors as well. So I have a tremendous amount of fear that as we go into the last part of 2025, you're going to see folks who are talking to their bankers, their accountants, and they're realizing I maybe broke even or I didn't. And I've lost so many assets and liquidity over the last 3 years, and I'm afraid, and I don't know who to turn to. And I feel like this is my alternative, whether it is able to get insurance money, whether it's my way out so someone inherits down the line, whatever that case might be. So I'm very concerned about what we're going to see this winter. And I do not think that we can say it enough. It is okay to not be okay. And we have to ask each other if we're all right and support each other. And that's where Loren and her work as the CEO of the National Farmers Mental Health Alliance and as someone who can be supportive of her farmer clients, she matters right now so much to help them with that burden.
Unfortunately, what we're seeing though is more and more farmers are saying they're tired of the mental health talk, right? Like it's been an emphasis, at
Yep.
least, maybe more so in Canada than the US, but I think we're seeing it in the US as well, where we see more and more farmers are like, look, like I get it. We're stressed out. We're not doing well, but I don't like, what else can I do? I have to just keep going the way I'm going. And so we're at a really kind of precarious position because because we have so many individuals who are starting to say, I'm done talking about it.
Mm.
And the reality is we need to continue to talk about it. Like we need to
Mhm.
continue to seek support and to find more innovative ways to do that. So the prognosis, as Bridgette said, is not good. The debt load that we're carrying, as far as interest rates, what we're going to see those do, we don't really know. There's a lot of unpredictability in the markets, a lot of
Mhm.
unpredictability in many other aspects of agriculture. For instance, weather. We are last year in the province of Nova Scotia in the past few years, they're almost like a microcosm, like a micro system there. And they've had like a deep freeze, they've had forest fires, they've had flooding, they've had hurricanes. And this past summer was the driest in the past 112 years. That's coming after a couple of years of already hardship. So I'm really thankful for the We Talk, We Grow program that's available in Nova Scotia, and we support the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture and the work that they're doing. But we need that replicated because the mindset around that program is having therapists in the community trained to respond to the needs in the community. And that's how we operate best. And that's where we need to see that growth happen. There's a piece of me that's very hopeful that we'll be able to see more and more of those communities of practice or those communities grow where it's accepted to have part that conversation is still part of the conversation.
Mm. Yeah. Right, Bridge.
The last thing to make sure that we also think about, we forget about those who are left behind and how much help they're going to need. Because we have those instances where someone dies by suicide and that partner is left to take over the farm operation or children or whomever. And they now have the combined situation of the farm and all that's going on financially and the decision making process that they may or may not be prepared for. And they don't get a chance to talk about their emotions. So I can bring up the facts. Loren can help fix the emotions.
Well, thank you. It's very interesting to me because the grief after suicide support group, there wasn't the um, there wasn't the pushback that we had anticipated. There were a number of people that were interested in it.
Oh, good.
And so I think that there are individuals who see the need and do want to embrace it. And I hope that those systems stay available for them ongoing.
I'm gonna go really deep. So I'm gonna just so you guys know, because I don't like being vulnerable. Just joking. I'm good. I'm good. I'm gonna delete out all my vulnerable parts out of the conversation. So you're gonna watch it back. You'll be like, "Where's that part where she like
About that part, it was so good.
she spilled her guts on the show and then she deleted it?" I won't lead
That's
by
okay. You're
example.
allowed to do that. You're allowed to do that if
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what. Yeah.
I have in the earlier days. Now I go, I'm comfortable. I won't ever share anything that I'm not comfortable with. I'm not at that
Okay.
point.
Okay.
So this is deep, and then you can grab me back, but I feel compelled to say it because again, uh, that person that cares for people deeply, like I'm the hard driver and it might not show, but I care for everybody so deeply, and I know I can't fix or control. But like, and I'll ask you a technical question after I get this out. I said to my husband, it was probably in times when beef prices were not too good. I said, Anthony, I don't care if we live in a box. As long as we are okay, that's all that matters. So I'm going deep here and we can grab it and bring it back up. But it breaks my heart that we're so tied to the farm, so tied to the picture. We get so far down and so negatively affected that we think whatever we think, that suicide comes up. Like, how do we, is it just continuing to have these conversations? Loren, the work that you're doing, how do we help? And then I guess I'll make this technical and tangible. How do we chat with the farmer that says, I'm fine? How do we make sure these bad things don't happen?
I wish there was a follow this 1, 2, 3, 4 step program, and we will all be peachy keen. There
Yeah.
isn't, right? We all deal with, we're very complex people. And some of what we see with farmers that are struggling now, I see it as a generational piece that's not been resolved. And we are sitting with generational pieces that we have to resolve. So that's one of the aspects of it. I love what you said though about saying to your husband, look, so long as you and I are together, we're okay.
Yep.
If it means that we're not going to farm and we are thriving, our relationship is thriving, that commitment to one another in that frame is really important. And I think part of the reason why some people don't are unable to make that commitment or are unable to go that far and stay in that place, part of it is because of these unrealistic expectations we put on ourselves as farmers. You know that we're competitive by nature. We compare our corn to our neighbor's corn. We compare how quickly we get on the land, how quickly we get off the land, how, like we're competitive by nature. I'm not saying that's terrible, but I am saying that it can get in the way. It can really get in the way because we set up ourselves for unrealistic expectations. And then when we don't meet those expectations, we develop anxiety and worry. And when that worry is not funneled properly or addressed properly, it develops into feelings of depression and feelings of hopelessness and helplessness and burnout. And so there is a pattern. Like I don't want to be like, oh, it's just by golly. No, like there are some really significant patterns. And as farmers and farm families and farming communities, we have to take a pause and notice these things. And we have to be willing to say, look, I could be way off base here, but do you think of taking your own life? Like we can have those hard conversations. And the interesting thing is when you have those conversations, by and large, even if an individual has thought about it, they'll be like, oh, wait a minute, like other people are noticing this. I do matter. Like having those conversations, as hard as they are actually one of the stoppers to the bad news, right? The choices that are really painful. One of the other program, like we teach a program called the Rural Watch, which is for agronomists, bankers, lenders. We have programs for lending companies, which are really important because oftentimes farmers will spill to their lender. Phenomenal to
Mhm.
me, fascinating to me, but I think it's because it seems like such a transactional relationship. It feels safer in some ways, and so bankers are often put in the front line of almost being therapists. And we see that also with kind of government agencies that are like extension programs in the US. I think Bridget's kind of,
Mhm.
she's got something to add there.
Yep.
So we really need to spend some concentrated effort on supporting those individuals because they end up supporting the farmer. They end up being the person to say, okay, look, I'm really concerned. Let's call this number together. I'm going to stay here with you until we call this number and just get you some support. Um, yeah, I think I I cherish the fact that you and your husband had that hard conversation. And I hope more and more people have that hard conversation.
Real quick, can I jump in there, Bridget?
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
said it on the show here because it was important. I mean, it wasn't that bad. I think we are at the lower beef prices. And I just kind of said to him, because I had been having these conversations on our show, I was deep into mental health. We've made it a thing to talk about our mental health.
Mhm.
We don't have mental illness in the family, thankfully. But I said, I just said it, and I'm saying it on the show because I know without a doubt that maybe the women in your life, if there's men listening to this, won't think to say it that way. But every one of us would say, I don't care if we live in a box as long as you're okay. Right? And that's kind of why I just spilled my guts on the show because if somebody's listening, I think they need to know that a life is way more important than a farm, right?
Far
Yeah.
and away. And I think it's also important that people realize that every job that you have within agriculture is you are far more important alive doing it than anything else. And when it comes to these, you know, extra auxiliary folks to agriculture, let's not forget about them and let's remember to share with them, just like Loren mentioned, some of those resources that we see that can be done, such as the bankers are starting to look for signs of depression and anxiety in their customers. Our grain merchandisers are doing it. We can reach out and get it help through our extension services. There are mental health first aid trainings that we can be giving our local fire departments and volunteer ambulance squads. That's going to help us share that type of information that I think is critical for people recognizing the signs of what's happening to themselves, but also to others, and drive them to a place where they're going to use the resources of folks who are in Loren's position or their primary care or whomever they can go to get that help that they need.
I love it. I want to touch on something really quick. You know
Sure.
how you said the crop advisor, the banker, would be the
Mm-hmm.
person you'd talk to? Funny enough, how I just told you that I don't talk to my family, I would easily tell a stranger that's a one-off where you can talk. Like it's just like, because it's not going to get back to the family. It doesn't come back up. So when you're saying that, this is one of those moments like our last conversation, Lauren. I actually that seems counterintuitive, but not because it's like transactional. It's like I know if I tell them they're a professional, they're not going to repeat it, and then it doesn't come up every time I see the family again. So that does not surprise me that the the mental health concerns fall on our professionals in the industry. I love that you said that.
It does. It does. The problem is that what they're experiencing now is a form of vicarious trauma. And so
Yes.
yeah, we have allied farm specialists who are like, what do I do with this information? And some of them aren't sleeping very well at night because they're worried about Johnny because he didn't seem real good when he came in and dropped his keys at the door or whatever, right? So we really need to spend some time and some effort in ensuring that those individuals have the skills needed and the resources needed to thrive because that role won't change and that relationship won't change. We will always need those people in agriculture.
Absolutely. I don't think we can't do what we do in farming without all of these people and without supporting each other. That's probably our biggest concern is supporting each other.
Mm.
Okay, so we're working towards the end here, and I'm trying to decide how we want to wrap up. I'll give you the spot for final words of encouragement, and then I feel that it's probably appropriate. Let's do what do you do if you think somebody's struggling? An action piece here. How would you direct them?
That's a Loren.
Okay.
She's got the right words. I just stumble through them.
And then I'd say let's wrap up with some words of hope because I'm trying to do that a little bit more,
Huh.
focus on positive. So, do you want to speak
Okay.
to that? You're a professional, you are a wife of a farmer, whatever wording we want to use. You're concerned about somebody. How do you handle that? That's probably 5 episodes, but
Yeah, it's a little bit tough to give kind of a
right.
step one, step two in that situation. If you're concerned about someone, ask them.
Okay.
If you're
Yes.
concerned about somebody, say, hey, look, I could be way off base here. I'm just curious. Tell me about what's going on right now in your life. Just get curious. Unfortunately, we're now putting you in a position where you might have to hold information you're not comfortable with. And I didn't talk about this earlier, but this is what happens sometimes to farm wives or farm spouses, is their spouse will say something and then they'll say, but you can't tell anyone. And they then have to sit with this massive secret And so my word to them would be like, it's not a secret worth keeping.
Mm.
Mhm.
It is absolutely somebody who that will be a confidence you will have to break. And that could have some fallout. I don't know the individual circumstances, but it's important that if you want to be to somebody what they need you to be at those times, and remember, you're not a therapist. You are not expected to fix everything, and having conversations can be hard. And so I want to relinquish people of their sense of duty in one sense, but in the other sense, I want to equip you to say, hey, I could be way off base here. Tell me about how life is going right now, or tell me about the farm, tell me about the stuff that keeps you awake at night, whatever that is. And then if you need to go beyond that, there are certainly crisis lines around. You are more than welcome to call our 1-800 number. It's good for Canada and the US. It's 1-877-639-8839. I should check that for you, actually,
Put it in the
Tracy.
show notes.
We'll put it in the show notes because my brain's not fully functioning right now, but
That's okay.
uh, you can call our 1-800 number, and we will route you to the resource center that is most fitting. In the US, they also have the Farm Aid number. I'd also invite you, if you're in Colorado, Florida, or Virginia, to reach out to Seed Peace. Seed Peace is a growing organization, and they're providing holistic care for farmers. So there's physicians, there's yoga, there's mental health if you need counseling. They have this whole program that they've designed, and they're really doing a phenomenal job. And so in those states, until they reach out to every state, and I think that would be their hope someday, I would definitely reach out to Seed Peace as well.
Bridgette, do you have any final thoughts?
You asked about words of hope.
Yeah.
First of all, Loren gave you so many of them just now. There are resources out there. There are places to call. There are people who can help. But more than anything, know that you are, as Loren would say, you are precious. You
Mm.
are cared for. And if you feel that you don't know where to start, well, you can start by reaching out to whomever is sitting beside you or one of us, because we will helpfully guide you wherever that need should rest. And we just want to make sure that you know it's okay to not be okay. And the rest of us are probably not okay too.
Yeah. That's that's beautiful. And as much as we said that farmers are tired of this conversation, I think this work, like we've done leaps and bounds in mental health. And I always take X because that's where it gets nitty gritty, real and raw very often. You don't know how many times I've been on there where I see a farmer put a post where you're like, uh-oh, is he okay? And the number of farmers that jump in there, oh my goodness, I can like almost tear up talking about this. I am tearing up, not almost. Look at me go here. We all care, but the number of farmers, big burly men that hop in there and say, "Are you okay, buddy? Are you okay? Like, here's my number." My inbox is, we know we're doing good work.
Hmm.
Everybody that's opening that up. And as much as we're tired of the conversation, these conversations do matter, right?
They do. And I think sometimes what we see is the people who say, I'm tired of these conversations are typically a little bit more outspoken than
Mm,
those who are saying, I'm not tired of these conversations. And I think there's probably an awful lot of people who are like, actually, I'm not tired of it. I'm getting there. And so those who say, I'm tired of this conversation, I would say, take a deep breath and check on the people around you then.
Hmm. And honestly, um, my last comment here is the fact that you have folks that say, I've heard this conversation. I'm tired of us talking about where this has been going on far too long, and things have or have not changed. But yet, just in the last 3 months, I have had sons and fathers come to me and say, I hear you talk about mental health on the radio. I want to tell you the story of how I lost my dad to suicide, or I lost my son, because I don't want anybody else to ever have to go through this again.
yeah. Yeah. Wow. Deep breath. That's so deep. I love this conversation, ladies. I love the work that you're doing. And Oh, so important. Every one of us, right? Talking, checking in. Do you have any final thoughts? I'm going to include your contact information in the show notes. So anybody in the audience, farmmarketer.com, impact farming, find the episode. It's all there. Final goodbye, how people can connect with you if they want to reach out.
I think for a final thought, just as Bridgette said regarding the "you are precious" piece, and just as Bridgette said, those individuals telling their story, that tells you your value. That's not easy to tell our painful stories, and people are willing to do it all the time in the hopes that someone else gets the message that they have value. And so the hopefulness I feel is there's more and more people who are willing to tell their story. And so if you're listening, be that person who's willing to say, yeah, this is part of my journey. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can just Google the National Farmer Mental Health Alliance. It's www.nfmha.ca or .org. And you will find all sorts of resources on that website, including one of Bridgette's blogs. I'm pretty sure it wasn't too long ago, Bridgette, that you wrote a blog for us. And so, yeah, go ahead and reach out to us that way.
And I think finding us by listening to the Rural Well, dropping us messages on our social media for the Rural Well, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, etc. I spend a lot of my time over on Twitter. I like to think I'm more positive than what happens on Twitter on most days, but you can reach out to me there as well.
I love it. Ladies, thank you for the work that you do individually and combined. And if you're listening, watching, check out the Rural Well podcast. Everything we've discussed will be linked in the show notes. Ladies, thank you for this beautiful conversation. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. You guys in the audience, if you like this conversation as much as I did, spread the word. As we've just been chatting about, it is so important. And we never know when this right conversation is going to reach the right person when they need it. So like it, share it, and get it out there. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.